If you're 30 to 35 years of age here today, you could be younger or you could be older, but I took the average age and I said if you're 30 to 35, you have an average of 518 months left to live. 518 months left to live. The life expectancy of a woman in America is 78 years old. Of a man is 73. So I took the average and I said, well, if you have 518 months left to live, how does the average American person live those years? And so if you're 30 to 35, you have maybe another 35 to 40 years. What does data tell us how you're going to live those years? And here it is. 25 years of your life, 25% of the remaining of your life is going to be work. 27 is going to be leisure. 33 is going to be sleep and personal care. 8% is going to be household activities. And 5% is going to be other things. Now, for me personally, and all of us, we understand what work is. But I was more concerned about what does it mean, leisure, sleep, and personal care. And this was shocking. Out of the remaining 30 to 35 years that you have, 12 years of your life is going to be 10% socializing, 10% gaming, 5% exercise, 26% reading, hobbies, relaxing events. 48% of it is going to be watching TV. But then I was more curious about what does it mean to sleep in personal care? 80% of the remainder of those 30 to 35 years of your life is going to be sleeping. 12% eating and drinking, 4.5% grooming, 2.3% miscellaneous care. 518 months, and this is what you're going to be doing for the remainder of the 30 to 35 years of your life. And that's data. It's proven. And so for me, for the past, I want to say 4 to 5 years, I've been really delving into the idea of how can I not be that? And really live an extraordinary life that is intentional. You see, because if this is what my life is going to look like, then I am not intentional. As a matter of fact, I don't have a purpose and I don't have a goal other than just work, sleep, watch TV, do events with my family and house care things and household things, and that's it. And it's so important for us to really start asking these deeper questions as to if I am 30 to 35 and I have 500 months left, what do I want those years to look like? And what I want to do and support you with and help you with is to help you understand and maybe see a perspective of what does it mean to live intentionally. You see, living intentionally is making deliberate choices to live with purpose, aligning your daily actions with your values and goals to create a life of significance. That's living intentionally. But I was very deliberate in highlighting the word deliberate. You see, because in order for me to be living intentionally, I have to be very careful and I have to be very deliberate on the choices that I make on a daily basis. Why? Because that will drive me to the last word of the definition, which is significance. There is not one person that you will talk to, and I don't care in what form of life they're in. If you were to ask them a simple question, do you want to be a person of significance? Not one of them will probably tell you, no, I just don't want to be anything. As a matter of fact, every single one of us wants to be significant. But what does that mean? What does the life of significance really mean? This is it. Significance isn't about what you gain, it's about what you give. Connecting you to something greater than yourself. Friends, we are living in a culture and in a time, and by the way, this is throughout history. There's a Bible verse in 2 Timothy, and we were literally talking about it this past week. People are lovers of self. We love ourselves. We are groomed and in a culture in which we love to live just for me. And studies have shown it over and over and over that if you are in that mindset, you are not living a life of significance. And when you're not living a life of significance, that is because you're not intentional in the decisions that you are making. And you're not intentional in your life. I'll never forget when I was single, I lived for Simon. The decisions that I made were for Simon. Everything was about Simon. And so what happened is what Stephen Covey talks about in the 7 Habits of Highly Successful People. The minute I got married, there was this major paradigm shift that happened in my life. Which now, it's no longer one person, but now I am deliberately making decisions for another person. It's no longer about me, it's about them. It's not about taking, but it's about giving. And then 4 years later, I went through another major paradigm shift when we had children. Then the decisions that I was making at that time, it was no longer for me and for another person, but now it was for a family. And when I look back and as I look in today, that in itself, not living for me, but living for others is what gives me the significance in life. But I can't do that if I'm not intentional in my life. But I want to prove it to you. See, I'm a man of faith. And for me, my faith really revolves around all the decisions that I make. And there is this concept in the Bible that Jesus talks about that a lot of us maybe sometimes look at it from a spiritual perspective, but I want to give it to you from a practical perspective. In the Gospel of John, there is this verse that says, unless a grain of wheat falls into the earth and dies, it remains alone, but if it dies, it bears much fruit. Now, if you are a man of faith and a woman of faith and you understand that verse and who he's talking about himself. But I want you to stop for a moment and look at it from a natural perspective. If the seed does not die, it cannot produce the tree. And it cannot produce the tree which bears fruit. Now, why is this concept so important when we're talking about intentional living? Because the intent of the seed is not to remain a seed. The intent of the seed is to live for others. And therefore, it dies to self. And so, why is this so important? Because the big idea is this: being intentional requires sacrifice. That's the big idea. If there is one thing that I can just give to you today and you can take with you, is this: living intentional requires sacrifice. So now, how do I live intentionally? And what areas do I need to be intentional in to find significance? There's many. As a matter of fact, in the courses that I've been able to coach on, there's 16. We don't need to go to 16. I want to give you 3 prominent and practical areas in which you need to be intentional in. And it is, number 1, purpose. Purpose. Number 2, time. And number 3, your relationships. Those 3 areas in your life and in my life, if we are not intentional in, we will have a major discourse and a life in which is way out of path to what we were called to be. Now, purpose forces you to identify your calling in life. So to live out your calling, you become intentional with time because it prioritizes your life so that you have clarity to achieve your purpose, which makes you intentional in your relationships. And those relationships guide you and hold you accountable to your calling. And what does that mean? Basically, what this means is this: my purpose helps me to identify my calling. And prioritizing my time allows me to live out my calling. And as I am living out my calling, I need to be very careful in the relationships that I have around me, because those relationships will hold me accountable to my calling. Because ultimately, what we're trying to do by living intentionally is that it's not about me, but it's about others. And so, with that being said, here's the first exercise, and it's right there in that first sheet, that first page. 3 questions. Like I said, due to time, I don't want to talk about all 3. What I'd like you to do is answer the first question. If I keep living like I am today, what will my life look like in 5 years, and am I okay with that?